Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Bern is beautiful, but also very cold. We went to this mountain yesterday, so my voice is now a little off because I had cold coffee. So apologies for that. But oh, there you go. If you all can join this, scan this little QR code. Don't have to sign in or anything. It's just some fun questions and anonymous as well. First question, where do I start? Just a little survey of the audience. How many years of experience do you have? I'm in the first column, graduated last year. Good mix of people. But this conference has been really nice from what I've seen so far. The venue is pretty amazing, so kudos to the organizers. All right, cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, so when I go to conferences and I'm like, we heard about Kubernetes and all these new tools coming out and, so many things that folks discuss, platform engineering, serverless, so on and so forth. And I ask people, are you using any of these things? And some companies, folks, they're like, no, it's complex, hard to onboard, maybe it's not the right fit. Or sometimes when they do it, they end up making a lot of mistakes. So you'll see how you can, basically things to keep in mind. And it's going to be a little cringy, but I have a little, you'll see what I mean. I'm just trying something new. All right, next question. So any challenges that you face when working the cloud native ecosystem? This is a word cloud, so when you type your words, it'll make a word cloud. So just interested in learning more about your challenges. Is there a better way? WASM? No? Okay. Security, complexity, landscape. Oh, the cold coffee. Landscape is a big one. Complexity, business onboarding, too much choices. I'm very happy to see this because my presentation has a lot of answers to the questions I see on the screen. And I believe there was a nice keynote about security as well. So that's good. All right, that's good. I'll take a screenshot of this because it is good for Twitter. Done. Or X. Lastly, do you think pineapple belongs on pizza? This is a quick one. Yes or no? All right, good enough. Oh. I'm a believer in eat what you like. I have tomato ketchup with my pizza. People don't like that. I love tomato ketchup with pizza. Anyway, not important. Moving forward, about me, I am Kunal. I work as a DevRel manager at Civo, CNCF ambassadors, run communities, learning quite a lot, been involved in communities. I learn in communities also quite a lot, seeing communities a lot. But anyway, been active in open source since my freshman year and just love attending events and stuff. All right, so the cringy part, meet Alex. How's it going? Going good? This is Alex, and see this guy cringing, so no. And Alex has a few questions for us, and we'll be answering those. So question one is, why should I go cloud native? It's a good question. So we all know plenty of benefits for cloud native applications, the ability to scale applications pretty quickly. How do I do next? Okay. Flexibility, agility in development and dev environments, optimizing cost management with a pay-as-you-go approach. And there are so many choices out there, like how do you run your infrastructure, how do you run your projects, how do you deploy it, and then security and so many other things. Ensuring resilience and high availability. You can go for multi-cloud approaches. We'll talk about that. Streamlining resource management with containerization, orchestration tools. Talk about Kubernetes, automation, CI/CD stuff, security. Can go on and on. Portability across various cloud providers. Adapting resource allocation based on demands. Microservices architecture for modularity. CI/CD pipelines for faster software delivery. So many advantages for going cloud native. Driving innovation, optimizing resources, also environment stuff, so you can reduce carbon footprints, things like that. If Alex may not already be familiar about the CNCF, which is a non-profit organization we all know under the Linux Foundation, dedicated to advancing cloud-native technologies adoption, and yeah, provides a vendor-neutral platform to host various open source projects. So now we all know what happened with Terraform, but we are not worried about projects in the CNCF to change their licenses and stuff. They're not allowed to do that, which is why many people opt for these organizations, and also like there are other ones as well, like Apache and stuff. So overall, CNCF plays a crucial role in the adoption and development of cloud-native technologies and stuff. So anyone see OpenTofu? Nice. They announced it Open Source Summit. And yesterday I was like, oh, OpenTofu. And I really craved some tofu and had some nice tofu. Anyway, CNCF landscape, we saw it in the challenges. Very complex, I agree. It's pretty overwhelming. And it's just a visual representation of all the tools in various domains. You can see CI/CD, application, and image build, and service proxy, container orchestration, security, container runtime, so many other things. This is not all of it, because I couldn't fit it on the screen. If you scroll down and left, right, you will see more and more. But yeah, it's pretty complex. And the question I get is, how do you navigate this? And this is also ever evolving. So another questions you get is, how do you stay up to date? And some of the projects, you may find like multiple projects do the same thing. So which one to pick? So we'll be answering that as well. All right, so that's a little bit of an overview for Alex over here. And Alex is saying, we got this. What do you mean? We have just started the presentation. So doesn't want to read the documentation? All right, no problem. So instead of using, let's say, Alex is not really worried about the docs and everything, just starts getting on the coding part. Instead of using, let's say, when you're starting a containerizing, like setting up your infrastructure, for example. So what Alex did is, instead of using a well-configured script and like an infrastructure as code tool, he decided to set up the cluster manually. This means like they're clicking countless of options in the web interfaces and navigating the landscape without a map. The cluster is finally up, but now the Alex's adventures were far from over. The first issue that came across is when they tried to deploy the company's flagship application, is that they decided to skip reading the Kubernetes deployment and service concepts, thinking that he knew everything already, and he just created a deployment with a replica count of, let's say, 1,000, right? Believing that it would make the application scale infinitely scalable. But that didn't work out very well, messed up. What did Alex do wrong? Can anyone tell? From what I just mentioned. Yeah, didn't read documentation, that's the first one. So yeah, so many alerts and error messages now showing up on the dashboard. Limited cluster resources were stretched to limit as 1,000 replicas try to compete for CPU and memory, and pod evictions and stuff, system crashes, people are frustrated, they're blaming Alex now. And they tried to scale the app. They're like, OK, we scaled it up. Let's say we try to scale it down a little bit. Maybe that would reverse the damage, but the damage has already been done. So there's one very crucial point with if I want to leave you with something at the end of this presentation, which is don't skip the basics. So not just Kubernetes, cloud native, or whatever. Never skip the basics. So what Alex did later on is swallowed their pride, started reading the Kubernetes documentation, learned about resource limits, replica sets, how to properly scale applications, slowly but steadily won the race. All right, moving on to the next question, which cloud provider to choose? I'm not going to name any, but what I do recommend people to try out at least is a multi-cloud approach. Anyone here uses a multi-cloud approach? Few people? Nice. Multiple benefits. Reduced vendor locking, that's the top priority. Like, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. Enhanced reliability and resilience. You're distributing your applications across various regions and various cloud providers. Again, not putting all your eggs in one basket. Geographical redundancies. Many areas may have their own SLAs and stuff, and you try to pick spread it across, and so that there's no one, let's say, you're not relying on just one geographical region. Optimization of costs. Some of the services for some of the cloud providers may be like, okay, I'm going to use this service by this provider. I'm going to use this service by this provider. This makes more sense. This is cheaper. So there's one company I know, I'm not going to name, but they do like object storage only, and they make it much cheaper. So using that company for that, and then some other company for some other things. Compliance and data sovereignty. Innovation, features access. Some cloud providers may offer some of the features that other may not. So if you're interested in trying that out. And redundancy for high availability. So again, not putting your eggs in, all your eggs in one basket. If one of the services are down for some of the cloud providers, then yeah, you're not going to be completely dependent on that. Risk diversification, again, the same thing that I already mentioned. And then scalability and performance, so trying to maximize that, distributing your workloads and all sorts of things. Also vendor negotiation leverage. So sometimes you can tell that, okay, I'm using this provider, I'm using that provider, they're offering me this much, they're offering me this much discount. And often I'm like, okay, we can do that as well. So maybe you can save a little bit of money over there. And then disaster recovery is another one. All right, now we talk about deploying your application, so many approaches. Now there's the WASM thing, I'm not going to talk about WASM, but interesting. Serverless, that was another one. Then containerization, Kubernetes. So Alex is saying serverless is looking pretty cool. When did serverless come out? Does anyone know? I don't remember. Was it recent? The hype? Not sure. Anyway, so Alex is falling for the hype cycle. Not going to wait. This might not be the right fit for me. So I'd like to give a shout out to Kelsey. It's pretty cool, the deciding factor. No, hype cycles don't last long when people understand how things actually work. Very nice tweet. Let's try to understand the hype cycle. So take an example of serverless computing, often associated with platforms like AWS, like Lambda, Azure Functions, Google Cloud Functions, so on and so forth. But here's why how the hype cycle of serverless actually played out. So initial hype, the innovation trigger, it promised like the elimination of server management and the ability to run code in response to events without worrying about the infrastructure. And again, I'm not saying anything like don't do serverless. That's not what I'm saying, because in the end, I'll talk about like how it's now helping so many other people. But we're talking about understanding the hype cycle. And yeah, so that's the initial hype. And this concept, serverless seen as a revolutionary, as it's like abstracting many of the infrastructure concerns that people have. Next step of the hype cycle, peak of inflated expectations. So serverless reached that peak as developers and organizations were like all rushing to adopt it. There was a belief that serverless would completely replace traditional application architectures, leading to cost savings and scalability and ease of development. Then the next part, which is straw or disillusionment. So as organizations then, we now started to use serverless more extensively, they realized maybe it wasn't a silver bullet. And so many challenges emerged, like increased complexity in managing, let's say, serverless functions at scale, difficulty while debugging and monitoring, concerns about vendor lock-in. Anyone use serverless? Any challenges, anyone you faced? Anyone? Some nice swag to give out if we do audience participation. But anyway, right, but that's not a negative thing. It's like, which brings me to the next point, slope of enlightenment. So during this phase of the hype cycle, organizations and developers, they begin to realize and understand the appropriate use case for serverless. So it may not be, let's say, a one-size-fit-all solution, but it was very well suited for event-driven workloads, real-time data processing, certain type of microservices, stuff like that. Bringing us to the last point, plateau of productivity. So serverless computing found its niche and became a valuable tool. The cloud native toolkit still active, people are using it. Folks learned how to use it effectively alongside other cloud native technologies like Kubernetes, containers, all sorts of things. So while we can say that this necessarily, let's say, didn't introduce any groundbreaking inventions, when you talk about serverless, it's not actually, we all know it's not serverless. There are servers available and running, but it's just that it's abstracted away. So maybe not any groundbreaking invention, but there's represented like a significant shift in how developers thought about like applications and managing their applications, abstracted away some of the infrastructure concerns, offering a more event-driven, event-triggered approach to computing. But yeah, when folks started scaling it, some of the challenges were there, but then they sort of like realized, okay, not a one-size-fits-all solution, but better suited for certain type of things. So good reminder, the hype cycle is while let's say new technologies generate excitement quite a lot, it's very essential to ask yourself what's the basic of it is. Like how is it like this tweet I just mentioned in the previous example by Kelsey. If you understand the basics, which is the next question, how to not fall for the hype. Anyone who falls for the hype. It's AI hype going on right now. I love AI, we do it at our company, but still people are talking about it. So how do you not fall for the hype? Nice. Now, other talk is also very good. I think it's K8s GPT. I believe it's being recorded, right? All the talks? Very nice. I like that. This is why I like smaller events. You only have 2 tracks to choose from, compared to a 10,000 person event, 9 tracks going on one at a time. But anyway, I'm deviating. But yeah, simple answer, basics. Never skip the basics. Just don't skip the basics and the basics, and things will become clear. Right. Moving on. Okay, so how do you map your cloud native journey? Something we talked about hype, we talked about mistakes made by Alex. Now how do you map your cloud native journey? Pretty simple. Let's talk about before embarking on your cloud native journey. People ask, should I use this, should I use that? Should I use Istio or something else? So it depends. The question people give is, what are your needs? What are your expectations? So before you move on, embark on your cloud native journey, like we're talking about it, it's crucial to assess your organization's needs and goals. So understand what the existing infrastructure is, what are the pain points, what are your business objectives, things like that. And then think about whether you need to, this is the point, yeah. Think about whether you need to improve scalability, reduce operational costs, enhance your agility, or just achieve any other strategic outcomes that you may have. And this is basically going to serve as a foundation towards you crafting your cloud native journey. The next one is choosing the right CNCF projects and tools. Talk more about this later because it's a little bit overwhelming. The way I look at it as the CNCF landscape is as like a dictionary. So dictionary is complex. This dictionary, someone give a dictionary. It's like so many words and so many definitions. But when you're asked what is the meaning of assessing? What is the meaning of assessing? So you'll go to A, you'll go to S, E, then you'll find the word. So you have a problem, and then you're searching for the solution. That's one of the ways by which you can look at the CNCF landscape. I think one of the benefits is for the landscape being so overwhelming that it offers a lot of choices, if that makes sense. It's going to keep evolving. In same domain, multiple tools will be kept on adding, but you have to decide what are your expectations and then pick the right tool for that. So now you have a clear understanding of your organization's requirements, and you can select appropriate CNCF projects and tools that align with your objectives. And then you can evaluate, we'll talk about like factors like the project maturity, community support, compatibility with the existing technologies that you have, and ensuring that your choices can address the immediate needs that you have while also contributing to your long-term cloud native strategy. Speaking of which, building a cloud native strategy. So develop a comprehensive strategy that aligns the roadmap for adoption and implementation. We'll talk more about this later. So it starts with like a timeline. You have a timeline, you have some milestones, some KPIs, like key performance indicators to track the progress. For a long-term goal, short-term goals. Also consider training and skill development for your employees, security measures, and if you're using these tools and completely shifting to a new technology, then how much is it going to cost in terms of resources? So resource allocation, that's another one. And then you build a well-crafted strategy that provides a structured approach towards successful transition to cloud-native practices while achieving the goals that you have set. But now the main part, so many projects, right, in the CNCF landscape. How do you go about it? So when you talk about CNCF project adoption, fundamental part I look at is the security. It's paramount when it comes to adopting CNCF technologies, and you must follow best practices to secure your containers. This is not a security talk, but I think there are pretty nice ones at this conference. But yeah, throughout your entire cloud-native stack, basic stuff like strong access controls, that's another one. Ensuring container image integrity, regularly patching and updating your software, using security scanning tools. There are plenty in the CNCF landscape, like the open source tools that you can use. I think there's Kubescape, which is nice in the landscape, and there are others as well. I'm only sharing the ones in the landscape, but many people use proprietary software as well, so whatever works for you is fine. But yeah, and then you should also consider as an organization the identity and access management, encryption, network segmentation to protect your sensitive data. So it should also be an ongoing process. It's not like I'm going to have security at the end or cost monitoring at the end. No, I recommend do it from the very start, and also have continuous monitoring and incident responses kept in place that will help you keep the journey going. Next fundamental, CNCF adoption, CI/CD. Implement CI/CD in cloud-native environments. It will enable automated testing, continuous integration of code changes, seamless deployment to production, best practices following for the pipelines like building, testing, deploying code automatically with robust version control. You can use infrastructure as code tools, so on and so forth. So not going to talk much about CI/CD. We all know what CI/CD is. Managing containers and orchestration. So typically using tools like Docker, Kubernetes, these are the core when we talk about cloud-native computing. Best practices involve containerizing applications using container registries for secured storage, and employing with orchestration platforms for scaling and load balancing and resource management and effective cluster management, all sorts of things. 2 things I missed. Can anyone share like best practices for CNCF adoption? Yes, next point. Monitoring, logging, observability, crucial for gaining insights into your organization's performance, health, and monitoring your cloud-native applications. So you can use the tools, popular ones, Prometheus, Grafana, collecting metrics, setting up alerts, gaining visibility into your applications and behaviors, and effective monitoring and logging. Basically, it allows for just makes sense. You wouldn't know what's gone wrong until you see it. Same thing with cost optimization. So people ask me, how do you reduce cloud costs? It starts with monitoring. Lastly, compliance with industry regulations and internal governance standards, which is also vital for organizations that are operating in cloud-native environments. So defining compliance policies, ensuring data protection measures, and automating compliance checks. So have clear roles and responsibilities for managing all the cloud-native resources you have, and again, access controls and all sorts of things that we talked about earlier. But these are just some of the basics. You all know this. But if we talk about my main point that I'm coming at is so many projects, right? So how do you evaluate a project's viability? Let's say you have a CNCF project. And this is a question to you. Everyone uses CNCF projects? Yeah? So when you pick that project, how do you assure that, okay, this is nice, I'll use it, and I'll put it in my project, my organization? What are some of the things you keep in mind? GitHub stars. Oh, it's a hot take. Well, I agree, vanity metric. Because I'm a content creator, I do stuff as well. Projects reach out to me, can you help with us, do a Twitter shout out or whatever, and get some GitHub stars. I'm like, okay, may not be it's a good vanity metric, and people do care about it sometimes. Also, maybe sometimes for funding and stuff, they ask. Few people have told me that. But anyway, GitHub stars. Anyone else? how old is the project? So maybe the CNCF has various stages, incubating and all these other one, graduated. So would you be more confident picking a graduated project than an incubating one? Raise of hand. Or it doesn't matter. Or doesn't matter? New project, just like right now in the CNCF ecosystem, one day ago. Think a little bit. People sometimes care. You were saying something.
I was just thinking about another metric I would be looking at is how active the community is.
Very good point.
How fast they're reacting to
Hmm.
issues and stuff like that. That's something that I personally use because it speaks to maturity a little bit, how they interact with the open source community. So that's something I like to.
Yeah, I do it as well. I'm sure many other people do. Because when you get involved in a community, you don't always. So when you're actually involved in the community, you get to see how the project functions, what are the future roadmaps, and not just what they are trying to show you. I think community support, 100%. So yeah, project assessment criteria. So project maturity, evaluating the maturity of CNCF projects, so that are graduated or like an incubating stage. The reason is they tend to have more stable APIs and a broader community support, like you just mentioned. And then, sorry. I'm from Delhi, so we get 40 degrees temperature. Not used to this. But I live in London now, so not for long, but still adjusting to the weather. But yeah, community support, assessing the activity, the level of activity in the project's community. What type of activity do you look for in communities? Like what sort of metrics do you look for, specifically with community?
I mean, if it's open source, I look at pull requests and issues and how the interaction is, as well as maybe a community forum and what people are talking about.
Yeah, so like frequency of contributions, how often the releases are happening, discussions on the Slack or mailing lists or forums and stuff. Right. Also, there's one more point, which is good, maybe might work for you, is end user adoption. So investigate whether the project is adopted by well-known organizations and whether it aligns with your industry or your use case. So the next point is important, project fit. So clearly define, like I mentioned, before embarking on your journey, what are your needs? So when you have your organization's technical and business needs defined, you choose the project that directly addresses these needs rather than selecting tools based on the hype. And compatibility, also making sure that the selected projects are compatible with your existing technology stack and that can seamlessly integrate with your existing infrastructure. So very simple, community, activity in community, and user adoption, what the graduated stage of the project is, maybe that will help. GitHub stars, compatibility, and so on and so forth. Good, nice bullet points. Okay, moving forward. But Alex is saying, this is so cringe. Sorry, I'm going to remove it from next slides. But Alex is saying, I found multiple projects that do the same thing. Okay, project overlaps. So understand where the project is overlapping in functionality and purpose, and evaluate whether these overlaps are beneficial. So for example, for like redundancy or like failover, or if these overlaps are detrimental. So this involves the overlaps that cause confusion and or like inefficiency, things like that. And when you're looking at overlapping projects, consider the broader ecosystem. So sometimes that two projects might do the same thing, may work with the entire ecosystem in a different way, and may work well together with some specific projects in the ecosystem. Those are 2 points for project overlaps. Anyone else? Anything else to share? You find 2 projects do the same thing, or you pick the right one. Yep. Try both. Yeah, try both. POCs, a proof of concept. You can do that. Next point, resource efficiency. So evaluate what your current team's like existing skills and expertise are, and choosing the projects that align with that. But obviously, sometimes a little bit of training might be required, and then the scalability and resource requirements. So, for example, for the selected projects, you should consider that as well, and ensuring that it fits within your organization's budget and infrastructure constraints. When also picking a project, it's my favorite point, which is the next one, is vendor neutrality. So be cautious of projects that might lock you in a specific vendor's products or services, and choose the projects that promote vendor neutrality and open standards. I'll probably mention it again in my slide because very important point. But yeah, it's one of the highlights for when picking an open source project, because you can change. MongoDB changed their licenses and a while back, and then people who used that, they had to, like it wasn't really free to use, if you will. But and now with Terraform, which is, I don't think it's gonna, mixed feelings. It's not gonna really change for a lot of people, but I'm very excited to see, especially now when they had OpenTF. I was like, okay, I'll see who is maintaining it in 5 years. But now they're like, okay, Linux Foundation is supporting it. So I think, okay, now that's good. If Linux Foundation is supporting it, then maybe something nice to look forward to. But yeah, I'm always open-minded when it comes to such things, and I always welcome change. I think that's another good point. Projects, what was I talking about? Security and compliance, that's another one. So assess the security features of the projects and the track record of the projects. Prioritize security, I believe. That's the key point, especially if you're handling sensitive data. And ensure that the selected projects also comply with the industry regulations and internal compliance requirements. Good point was mentioned about trying both. So conduct POCs. Before fully committing to a project, conduct like small-scale POCs to evaluate how well the project is performing and how well it meets your needs and interact with your existing infrastructure. And community engagement. So actively engaging in the project's community, will like attending meetings, asking questions, contributing if you can, establishing a connection, just gaining insights. It's very different than just not getting involved in the community. When you get involved, okay, where the project is headed, how many contributors are actively contributing, what does the future look like. Why is it important to talk about the future? Maybe anyone can share? Why do we care about the long-term future of the project? Like, why can't I just use it for short-term goals? Well, you can, technically, but for long-term viability, like if I'm using this project now, if it's costing me a lot, I may not want to migrate from it or something. So review the project's roadmap, to understand where the future direction is and whether it aligns with the long-term goals or not. And always have a backup plan or contingency strategies in case the chosen project does not meet your expectations or, let's say, becomes unsupported. Lastly, I'd say also docs and support, so the quality of the documentation, availability of the support resources. I believe like well-documented projects with a strong community support, it's a bit underrated, but it's very important deciding factor for how easy it makes to integrate and maintain the project. And then feedback loops. So establish feedback loops within an organization to continuously evaluate the effectiveness and the efficiency of the project you have selected. And like I said, ready to make change. So be open to change, be prepared to make adjustments if needed. All right. But about the landscape, keeps evolving. How do you stay relevant? So staying current and with the rapidly evolving CNCF projects, and navigating different various tools while balancing open source and proprietary solutions for your organization may require a strategy or some of the best practices. Before I move forward with that, maybe a question for you. How do you keep evolving? Like, how do you keep yourself up to date? Very nice. Community conferences like this. Yeah, it's actually a good point, and I think it's also in my slide. Mailing lists, signing up to newsletters, things like that. Yeah. All right. First one being continuously learning and monitoring. So subscribe to like newsletters. I think CNCF has one. Mailing lists, official social media channels to receive updates and on like project releases and news and events and stuff like that. Regularly monitoring the CNCF project landscape to identify new and emerging tools that may align with your needs. Then the community engagement, because when you're actively involved in the community, in the like attending meetups, conferences, webinars, and events such as this one, like conferences like this one, and if you're engaging with the community, it helps you stay more informed about the project developments because you're actually involved in the community. You're not just glancing through your Twitter feed and social media, and you learn about the best practices. If you have time contributing to open source projects, it doesn't have to be code related. You can provide feedback, submit bug reports, or just contribute code as well if you like. Non-code contribution, that's fine as well. It basically fosters a more deeper understanding of the project and the evaluation. But we talk about the continuously evolving landscape. Also establish a risk mitigation plan that includes monitoring the health of your chosen tools. Now this plan should have like an outline of steps to take in case the tool that you have becomes deprecated or unsupported. And for this plan, identify some other tools in the landscape that may serve as like a replacement if needed, either CNCF projects or other open source projects or proprietary software. Right, evaluating tool longevity, that's another one. So before adopting a project, long-term viability, I believe I mentioned this previously, but yeah, considering factors like community activity, project maturity, alignment with the CNCF goals. I would say be a little cautious adopting projects that are marked as incubated or have like limited community support. Maybe some people may agree, some people may not agree, but I think it can be good for meeting short-term goals. But I think, yeah, just give it a little time. It's so many factors to consider, but still, like, do your homework. Embrace standardization. So prioritize tools and technologies that adhere to open standards. So it's a nice point I'd like to mention, as they are less likely to become obsolete. I believe, don't think could be, no. I believe the CNCF projects follow these standards. So I think this point is for if you're using proprietary software solutions that might not be as adaptable to, let's say, your changing requirements. And then regularly review your tooling stack, periodic reviews if it's aligning with your needs. Yeah, I like to use consider a use it or lose it approach. So where tools that no longer provide significant value, I just don't use those. It's phased out from my project. And CI/CD to automate the deployment of your applications and infrastructure, basically for updating and replacing tools. It makes it more easier, and also helps in like testing and validating tool migrations before you deploy it to production. I said I will mention this again. So yeah, vendor neutral strategies. When using proprietary tools, aim for vendor neutral configurations wherever possible. Avoid tightly coupling your infrastructure to a specific vendor's technology stack. So, for example, utilize open APIs and adhere to practices that maintain flexibility and have minimal vendor lock-in. Yeah, training and skill development. We spoke about this already, so I'm gonna mention that. Licensing and cost, that's another one I want to mention before I forget. Be aware of the licensing model and costs that are associated with both the open source and proprietary tools. Consider how licensing changes could affect your budget and operations. See this in the news more often than before now. I don't know, yeah. Companies change licenses, people lose their minds. But yeah. If you're using a project that works with the license you have, consider what will happen. First of all, can they change the license? If in the CNCF, maybe they can't. But if they do, then how will it impact you? So yeah. Did I miss anything? It was going to be a workshop, but picking a project and going through the entire landscape, so like 2-hour workshop, and like we have 40 minutes. Okay, let's do 40 minutes. So I put down some action items for you to take home. But if I would just like to summarize it in one word, make sure don't skip the basics, and you won't fall for the hype cycle. Yeah, just don't skip the basics, and all the things I mentioned helps. Thank you. You're welcome. It looks very promising. All right. Alex didn't learn anything. Hopefully you did. But no, all jokes. I love the AI. It's all good. Like, we do it at our company, and it has. I'm really looking forward to it. The whole GPUs and stuff. But anyway, maybe some other talk. Yeah, that's my Twitter. Um, Learned a lot from the audience, so thanks for sharing, and thank you. Need some green tea. Do you have green tea?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
So thanks so much, Kunal, and thanks so much, Alex, for that awesome talk.
That was cringe.
We do have time for some questions, if it's okay for you, Kunal, before green tea. Are there any questions for Kunal?
My DMs are open as well, so if you have any later on, or if you have any feedback, happy to hear feedback.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for the lovely talk. My question here is about longevity. Like, suppose you followed all the suggestion, best practices, and you adopted an open source product, and 2 or 3 years down the line, it becomes deprecated.
The
So
what?
how, 2 or 3 years down the line, it becomes deprecated or not getting updated quite often as needed. Your requests for feature or bug reports are unanswered. What you do in that situation, or how you avoid such situations?
I don't think you can predict it. If I take an example of a very nice project, I know Kubernetes is not going to be that project. How do I know that? It's a big project, community support, a lot of end users are using it. And even if I talk about the history, I don't think I have seen a project that fits that use case. If you're talking about like the graduated ones and stuff, that's why I mentioned it's very highly likely for projects who are just like in the incubating, like just starting out. But if you talk about something that is already like there, because if you get a project in the CNCF, it's all open source. So like when you want to get one in the CNCF, they're like these people are very strict. So take a look at the PRs that are like, so if you want to get a project in CNCF, open a PR, and then I think people have to vote or something, and you have to comply with all the requirements. Lot of things you have to write. And moving that to like next to the topmost stage, the maintainers have like worked so hard, and the communities and the organization. So they're not just going to be like, okay, 2 years. I don't know about you, but years go by like so fast. It's like September, So 2 years, I think it's not that much, which is why the OpenTF thing came out. I was like, wait for 5 years. We'll see who is maintaining it after 5 years. Then I'll be able to share more about my feedback. But now it's in the Linux foundations, I think very good. But I think having a backup plan, like I mentioned, either proprietary software or open source, like, okay, exactly I mentioned that. If this project gets deprecated, I'll do this, I'll use this project, and this is how much it will cost me, this is how we'll do it. But I think it doesn't happen that often with graduated projects.
Yeah, just follow up with that. How in your company you regularly review to maintain product lifecycle? Like,
We look at how it's benefiting us. So we use heavily K3s, and now I've seen that with, let's say, if I talk about few years down the line, I think Kubernetes and K3s, like it might not be too different. Right now, K3s is what it is. It's removed a bunch of modules and stuff. Like, okay, lightweight, you can run it. But I think if we talk about more abstraction and stuff with Kubernetes, I don't think it'll make much difference. So we adopt it. Now we're also offering Talos, which is an open source, security-focused OS for K8s. So adapting to your organization's needs. So it's all about you, your organization, your needs, how the project is evaluating your organization's business goals and stuff, and not the hype. The hype is good, it's fine, but think about how it's benefiting you and what the basics are. So good, an example from my company, we still have K3s, but if something happens in the next 4 or 5 years, we'll be okay. We're using Talos now. If Talos goes, we'll do something else. So, yeah.
thank you.
Oh, thank you. I like this mic thing. It's very cool.
We have time for one more question back there. Perfect, Dor.
Hello? Yeah, it works. You mentioned you are using K3s, and I was just wondering how many nodes per clusters do you feel safe to run?
What do you mean? Like
Your K3s clusters, how many nodes are there? like hundreds or just like a few?
Oh, I think when it comes to that, the answer is same to Kubernetes. The people ask if there's anything different, like can I use K3s for production? 100%. I don't think there's a
So you're not missing any features.
correct. Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
that's correct.
Thank you very much. I think Kunal will be around here after a round of green
I'm
tea,
here.
so you can ask him more questions. We have a small gift for you, Kunal.
Oh,
Cool drawing of you holding the talk.
oh, you were doing this whole time. Oh, I used to be in art and craft, but then I got in tech. I was in high school. I was in art and crafts club. Then anyway. Do you mind if I take a selfie? Because nice crowd. Okay.